Several different actions, situations, and environments cause the different types of soil degradation. Two categories they fall under are human caused and physically caused. Soil erosion is kind of the annoying person that wherever you turn, especially in this section of our presentation, always seems to show up. Everything happens, and in the end, you have soil erosion. This is when soil withers away and becomes displaced due to the lack of vegetation. Soil is now free and open for any type of degradation, breaking down, and eventually being destroyed. The continuous growing of one crop for mass production. The environment invites and encourages pests and diseases to thrive because there is only one type of plant in the area. Because all the plants are the same, they will die off from the same disease or pest. The soil is now bad soil due to the pests and diseases that are in it and become bad grounds for vegetation. Where there is no vegetation, there will be no holding together, which leads to soil erosion. Overgrazing is when animals excessively graze lands for food. This leads to soil degradation because the vegetation that is keeping the soil together is being uprooted for consumption. The soil is then more susceptible to water and wind degradation and overall erosion. Too much water causes salinization. In all forms of water, there are dissolved salts. So when the water evaporates off the soil or is drained, it leaves behind salts that were once dissolved in the water during irrigation. A continued exposure to chemicals or the use of chemicals to unnaturally increase the amount of crops would pollute the water sources and would then decrease the availability or the ability of the soil to grow crops and vegetation. Intense winds can damage and destroy the topsoil, which then would cause erosion. Extreme amounts of rainfall and flooding can damage the soil, which would then cause degradation. Too much rainfall can wash out the nutrients needed for plants to thrive and grow in the soil. Not enough rainfall can hinder the soil's ability to transport nutrients and water to the rest of the soil, other plants, and organisms. Increase in temperature makes it too difficult for plants to grow in the soil, and where there is no vegetation, there is no holding together, which leaves the soil more vulnerable to other types of degradation.
Changes in soil. Soil degradation is basically the decline in soil quality or quantity. The major factor that causes soil degradation is water and wind erosion. As a result, erosion limits the growth of plants as well as the soil chemistry. When soil is biologically degraded, the loss of humus and animal life makes the soil have poor quality. Humus, dead plants and animals, is found near the surface of the soil. If the area is deforested and converted to farming, the size and amount of humus is reduced quickly and becomes less fertile since there are not enough nutrients. The nitrogen cycle is an important process of soil fertility. Nitrification, nitrogen fixation, and decomposition all allow the soil to have nitrates for the plants, bacteria, and little animals in the soil. If deforestation takes place, then the recycling of nitrogen in the ground stops and the soil will become less fertile. Physical degradation is caused when agricultural practices impact the physical property of the soil, usually seen by heavy machinery and tillage. The soil begins to lose structure and the permeability changes, thus affecting plants and animals. Chemical degradation basically refers to the change in chemical composition of the soil. Acidification, decline in fertility, changes in pH, salinization, and chemical toxicity occurs. The overuse of fertilizers and pesticides, runoff water, waterlogging, and groundwater with high salinity all cause that.
The soil seems so unimportant and insignificant to our lives, but soil degradation has detrimental consequences to the environment, society, and the economy. I will discuss major consequences of soil degradation and their effect on society and economy. The first is desertification, which is the process of fertile land turning into desert. Topsoil erosion is the cause of desertification. The soil loses the humus layer, which is very nutrient rich, and so in turn the soil cannot support any vegetation. Not having any vegetation dries out the soil and it effectively turns to desert. Also, this desertification process creates dust storms. China is being affected by major dust storms. The dust is arriving from the desert in Inner Mongolia. The residents were recommended to stay indoors and to wear masks while walking through the streets. Other results from soil degradation are the reduction in crop yield, which leads to famine, less jobs for farmers, rural to urban movement of people due to the job loss of farmers, an increase in conflict for fertile land, and the increased use of chemicals to create fertile land. Soil degradation can be managed and greatly reduced when using these following techniques. Crop rotation and fallow periods allow for periods of time for the soil to regain fertility by planting different crops after every harvest. Terracing and contour plowing allows for less water erosion by plowing with the shape of the land. Shelter belts or hedges or forests are used to protect farmland from wind erosion. Reforestation and forestation with the sustainable use of fertilizers and irrigation can minimize soil degradation. The government can also implement grazing quotas, which place limits on the amount of animals that can graze on an area to limit the destruction of vegetation. Also, controlling population and urban growth would reduce the strain put on the environment. A case study would be the European Soil Charter. The European Soil Charter was drawn up when over 30% of European soils were considered to be severely or moderately damaged. The Soil Charter states 6 things. Firstly, soil is one of the world's most important resources. 2. Soil is a non-renewable resource that is easily destroyed. 3. Farmers must be used methods to preserve soil quality. 4. Soil needs to be protected against soil erosion and pollution. 5. Urban development causes great damage to soil. And 6. Soil must be managed in a sustainable way. The Soil Charter also states that the management practices that will be put in place, and those are pasture extensions, benign crop rotation, organic farming, and afforestation, stabilization of the soil through crop cover, and other mechanical methods such as embankments, terracing, contour plowing, and shelter belts will also be used to protect the European soil from further degrading.